Yo, what is up, guys, and welcome back to Comicreview47, and today we're looking at Batman Volume 1, The Court of Owls. So, basically, this Batman series is a good place to start. This is actually, what's cool about this is that DC Comics in 2011, they did this thing called the New 52, and it's basically kind of like putting new issue 1, so that if you're new to comics, you could just jump right in here. And even if you're, if you've been reading comics for a long time, you could also jump in. So if you're new to comics, I'm gonna explain to you guys some of the stuff that you might not know, and so yeah, let's just jump right into it. So first of all, we kind of get this view of the buildings in Gotham City. So for those of you who don't know, pretty much everyone knows Gotham City is where is Batman's home city, and this is like literally one of the most like chaotic and dangerous cities in comic books. So anyway, so it kind of starts us off with Batman narrating, a little bit while he's fighting bad guys. So we kind of get this article. So there's this newspaper called the Gotham Gazette, my bad. So it pretty much asks you to describe what Gotham is in 3 words or less. So a lot of people would say, Gotham is, and then they would say what they wanted to say. So, some people answered Gotham is murdered, Gotham is damned. So, basically it's kind of cool because it kind of shows you the perspective of what people think about Gotham City. A lot of people think Gotham is hopeless, Gotham is villainous, this and that. And Batman doesn't quite think so. Actually, it's really cool because we get like a 2-page spread of all of Batman's classic villains. We got Scarecrow, Killer Croc, Two-Face, Mr. Freeze, the Riddler. And on the top right, we got a freaking gingerbread cookie. I have no idea who this is, or if he's even a real villain. Like, I don't know if they just put him here just for a small joke, or if he's actually been in the comics for a long time. Who knows? I'll try to look into it in one of my future videos. But anyways, Batman doesn't think that Gotham is hopeless. He doesn't think that it's so villainous because he pretty much says that Gotham really isn't defined by its villains. But people think so. They think, they kind of compare Gotham to Two-Face because they say that the city is at odds with itself. My bad. They say Killer Croc is like Gotham because it's like a cannibalistic monster. And it's cool to see this because I feel like Batman has hope for his city. And Batman is like, how Superman, he kind of has that S on his chest, right? It's a symbol of hope. It's kind of the same thing with Batman, but Batman is not so like internationally a symbol of hope. He's more of a local symbol of hope throughout Gotham City, which is kind of cool to see because Batman himself, he does have hope for the city. And also it's cool to see how Batman just fights against all his villains. He's got like these smoke pellets. Throughout this series, we're going to see a couple gadgets he starts using. And it's cool to see because Batman just kind of gets like thrown off this window. So he knows he can't handle all these villains, alone. So then we get the Joker, the freaking Joker teaming up with Batman. And it's pretty cool to see because, he's like cracking jokes, that's kind of his thing. And, they're both back to back fighting all these villains, kind of like warding them off. And they're successful in doing so. Going back to the question of Gotham is, Batman thinks, that Gotham is GCPD, Gotham City Police Department. And, for those of you who don't know. And so there's quite a bit of dialogue between Batman and Commissioner Jim Gordon. So Jim Gordon is a very important person in the Batman comics. He pretty much is one of the few people Batman really trusts. And Commissioner Gordon trusts Batman. And so it's kind of like cool to see. Anyways, Batman says that this jail breakout, it wasn't just a breakout. Someone was already behind this. So, Batman was basically investigating a weak link in Arkham Asylum. And Arkham Asylum is, the jail cell where they keep all these supervillains, which is a cool thing to see because, Batman's saying, well, no, it wasn't a breakout, but rather there was like an inside person. Right, so then Batman was investigating a kind of weak link in the jail, right? So Batman pretty much tells him it was this guy named Don Matthews, and once he finds out that Don Matthews was behind this, pretty much Commissioner Gordon is like taken off guard, And you know, he asked him, well, how did he know? How did Batman know that there was a weak link in Arkham Asylum? And he says that I had an inside man, you know, to investigate. And you know, they don't really explicitly say it, but you know, it was obviously the Joker that was like the inside man helping him investigate Arkham Asylum. And even Commissioner Gordon asked him this. He's like, it could have been a trick of the light, but were you teaming up with the Joker? And then Batman's like, no, you're ridiculous. That did not happen. And it's pretty funny to see. So next, you know, we get a cool, amazing artwork, by the way. The penciler, the inker, and the colorist, you know, they all work together to make this amazing view of the Batcave. So basically, you know, Batman's kind of busy. He's kind of concentrating. He's working. And, you know, Batman is working on a new system. And it kind of gives you an idea of what kind of technology he's using. So Batman is working on a contact lens that has access to the Bat computer. So essentially, let's just say, you know, he's at a meeting with someone. This lens is digital, so he can, like, it's kind of like a voice command thing, and it's, you know, it's kind of like a wirelessly connected to his Bat computer, which is really cool to see. So another thing that we see is that this wasn't actually the Joker, but this was rather Dick Grayson. And for those of you who are new to comics, Dick Grayson was, you know, the former Robin, and now he's known as Nightwing. So he kind of operates solo for the most part, but right now he's kind of helping Batman in this situation, right? So, you know, he kind of jokes a lot, and he's pretty lighthearted. But Batman, on the other hand, is usually more serious, and you know, he jokes occasionally, but he's a bit of a more serious person. So I think that's pretty cool to see that. You know, it kind of shows all these technologies that they're kind of introducing, you know, to the Batman series. And it's cool to see that, you know, with a mask that kind of like analyzes his face, he can just look like the Joker, which is actually pretty cool. They refer to this as an EMP mask. So in the next panel, we you know, we turn to Batman, kind of like he's having a meeting. You know, he's gonna give a speech to the people, and it's cool to see because his contact lenses, you know, they kind of like, he can analyze, he's got face recognition, and they kind of tell him all the analysis on these people. So the small guy, which is his son, he's the current Robin, and he in the comics he's the fourth Robin, but you guys don't really need to worry about them too much if you're new to comics. If you've been reading comics, you guys already know who these people are. And we also get a look at Tim Drake, who is now Red Robin, and he was a former Robin as well. And so yeah, it's pretty cool to see his new technology. So anyways, Bruce Wayne, who is, you know, secretly Batman, he's talking about this exact question that he's been narrating throughout the story. He's telling the people that you know, he can't really answer the question what Gotham is. He says that you know, when he was younger, he would remember he had hard times, you know, like his parents' death, which, you know, caused them to become the Batman. You know, he's not going to tell that to the audience, but, you know. And pretty much he's saying that this question of what Gotham is a pointless question. He's saying we got to stop looking to the past and the present, but rather look to the future. And he says, how about instead of looking at what Gotham is, let's look at what Gotham will be. And pretty much he's saying that Wayne Tech is modernizing Gotham. So Wayne Tech is you know, the company that he owns, and it's kind of been passed down through generations, right? And you know, since his parents died, he pretty much inherited that company a long time ago. And this company basically focuses on you know, technology, future improvement, this you know, making Gotham a better place to be. And also secretly, Wayne Tech is the company that allows Batman to have all these gadgets. He, you know, he does it secretly. He has his ways to you know, to do this stuff. Anyways, now we get to see that, you know, Alfred is kind of making jokes to Bruce Wayne. Now Alfred is the butler who took care of Bruce Wayne when his parents died long ago, and he's basically like his father figure. And you know, and also we see with the retina scan that he has the highest access level because he trusts them that much. And Batman doesn't trust people easily. I feel like Alfred is the person he trusts the most in the comics so far. And we're pretty much introduced to Vicki Vale and Lincoln March. So Vicki Vale has been a love interest of Batman in the comics, but she's not really too important in this series. We gotta focus more on Lincoln March. So Lincoln March is this dude who's like running for mayor, and he kind of chats a little to Bruce Wayne, and this and that. He's asking him about the company, and while he's talking to Bruce Wayne kind of like looks at Commissioner Gordon, and he kind of wants to see what he's talking about. So with the contact lens technology, he actually he can lip read. So it's pretty cool to see. So Jim Gordon is saying, talking about some kind of murder case, and 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 he's so distracted listening to Commissioner Gordon. Lincoln's like, are you okay? Are you listening to me? And then he pretty much stops dozing off, and then they pretty much want to meet up for lunch tomorrow. So anyway, so now we switch over to Batman. So he said Bruce Wayne says I need some air, and by that he means I need to be Batman and investigate this case that he overheard. And anyways, so we pretty much get this like brutal murder case. Like, this dude is literally stabbed many times with multiple daggers. And this murder happened between 5 to 6 days ago, and it's interesting because it wasn't just a murder. They wanted him to suffer. They put the knives in the exact spot so that he could die a long, painful death, right? So this isn't just any case. It's not just any murder regular case. This is something that's going to be set up for the upcoming issues that Batman is going to get into. And anyway, so Batman talks to Harvey Bullock. Harvey Bullock is a detective, in the Batman universe. And, he's usually kind of like the comedic guy and this and that, right? So he kind of asks him, all the details, and then he kind of sees that there's this owl insignia within the daggers. And it's cool because this is when you see that Batman is a really good detective. He notices that the daggers are filled with mercury so that they're easier to throw, and he runs a DNA test under the fingernail of the victim. He kind of scratches off some of the fingernail part to see, to check for DNA. And it's cool because he puts the DNA in his suit, and his suit scans it automatically. And so Batman kind of smells something. He says that he kind of smells linseed oil, but there's too much of it, so something's a bit weird. So he borrows Bullock's cigar, and when he lights it up, it kind of shows something that says Bruce Wayne will die tomorrow. So it's interesting because the guy that was killed, he left a message for Bruce Wayne. So what Batman essentially figures out is that this guy knew he was going to die. So now he's going to warn Bruce Wayne that they're going after him next. And, this detective, he's like, well, if it says tomorrow, he's in the clear, because since the murder happened 5 to 6 days ago, tomorrow means, 4 to 5 days ago. And Batman's like, no, this dude knew he was gonna die this day, so that by the time they would read his message, it literally means the tomorrow of the present, right? So, essentially Batman, he asked Alfred, so did you get the DNA scan of the guy under the fingernail? And he says, yes, the DNA match is Dick Grayson. And like I said, Dick Grayson was working with Batman. He's Nightwing. He's the former Robin. So it's like what? It's like, what is going on here? Why is there DNA match of him? All right, so jumping into issue 2, we kind of get an interesting. What's cool about this comic is that it kind of goes into Gotham City's history, and it pretty much expands on it a little bit, and it basically shows how back in the older days of Gotham City, his great grandfather Alan Wayne pretty much was the one who helped build Gotham City into the more modern place that it is today, and it's pretty cool to see. And he has this observational deck that he put in Wayne Tower. So Wayne Tower is a pretty important place in the comics too, and it's cool to see. And now you know, instead of seeing this nice view of Wayne Tower, we go to the next panel, and this dude's Bruce Wayne is literally being thrown off a window. Now he's not just being thrown off a window, just like it's not like it's something normal, because not only is he getting tossed out, it's the window is supposed to be shatterproof and unbreakable, but this guy who tried to kill Bruce Wayne, he's not just any assassin. He knew how to break this unbreakable glass to such a point where it would be like, you know, he had to hit the glass just right. And not only that, but he threw 2 daggers, you know, at his major, you know, artery points on his arms so that he can't move his arms as much. And these daggers are the same ones that we saw earlier with the owl insignia. So it's kind of crazy to see. So anyways, 24 hours, we kind of like jump back, you know, to the present, because when he gets thrown off the window, it's kind of like the next day. And we kind of jump back to 24 hours earlier. So we kind of got these guys in a chopper. They're getting ready to kill some guys, throw them off, some girls, I mean, and they're gonna throw them off a helicopter. Batman comes in with the motorcycle. It's pretty badass to see how he just fucking jumps on a train. It's crazy. And he pretty much breaks. So he goes up the train, and he pretty much makes it onto the freaking helicopter, which is insane. So anyways, he kind of stops these guys, and you know, we kind of switch to Commissioner Gordon. Now Commissioner Gordon is along with this guy, they're doing a kind of investigation of how this guy exactly was killed. So anyways, they're kind of like seeing something's just weird about this case. And you know, he asked Batman to, you know, help him out. So Batman's not physically there. He's in his Batcave, you know, with the kind of camera looking down at the victim's body, which is also new technology that he develops, because Batman is insanely smart. Like, he knows how to make these kinds of technologies. So he kind of scans the body, and he basically says, you know, that this is kind of a weird case. And they kind of find out that this guy wasn't just a regular guy. He was a trainer, right? And, you know, and this guy was a pretty damn good trainer, according to what they're saying. So it wasn't so easy to kill this guy. So whoever this murderer was, number one, they know what they're doing. They can kill a trainer pretty easily, and you know, they were able to get Bruce Wayne, you know, throw him off the window and hit his major, you know, artery point. So it's not just any regular just murder. You know, it was kind of like planned, and this guy's really professional, right? So, you know, on his right wisdom tooth, they kind of see again this owl insignia. So they're wondering, what is this about? So basically, Commissioner Gordon, he asks, is it about that old nursery rhyme that, you know, that we know? And he starts saying it. So the nursery rhyme goes as follows. It says, beware the court of owls that watches all the time, ruling Gotham from a shadowed perch behind granite and lime. They watch you at your hearth, they watch you in your bed, speak not a word whispered to them, or they'll send the talon for your head. So it's kind of like, it's kind of this nursery rhyme that's really cool, because it only exists in the comics. So basically, they kind of relate it to this thing called the Court of Owls. And Batman says, no, they're a myth, you know, there's no such thing. And Batman is pretty sure that they're not real, because Batman is really, he's actually considered one of the world's greatest detectives in the world. So if he says they're not real, it's most likely that they're not real. So Batman thinks someone's just trying to imitate this nursery rhyme and try to put fear into him, and he's not buying it. And it's cool to see it, because now we kind of go back to, you know, the DNA analysis that I said last issue. So basically, you know, they run a fingerprint of the skin under the guy's nails to see who the assassin was, and it shows, you know, Nightwing right here, and that was his DNA. And actually, they kind of hide. What's cool about it is that whoever's part of the Bat family is essentially, you know, all the people involved with Batman, kind of like Batman, you know, Nightwing, Batgirl, Red Robin, you know, this and that. And it's cool because they all have their identities protected. Even if you have a DNA scan, it's not going to show up in other people's computers, but it will show up in theirs, which is really cool to see. So anyways, the reason why Dick Grayson's DNA scan was under that guy's fingernail, meaning why he was a part of it. It's not because he was the murderer. It's because that guy approached him saying something weird like they're real, they're everywhere, and they're sending him for you, all of you. So Dick Grayson explains Batman that's what the guy told him before he died. Maybe, presumably a week earlier before he died or something like that. And, he says he just shrugged it off. He thought the guy was just, extremely religious, or he was in some kind of he was a zealot. And a zealot is basically someone who, defends their culture or religion to a point where it seems a bit excessive. So yeah, that's kind of what Nightwing thought. And anyway, so now we go back to Wayne Tower, like I was mentioning earlier. So now Bruce Wayne is meeting up with Lincoln March. So like I said, Lincoln March is the guy who's running for mayor, right? They kind of put a meeting, and Bruce Wayne is insanely rich. I mean, he's like a multi-billionaire, presumably. Maybe he's got I'm not sure if he's the richest, but he definitely is one of the richest. He's basically like Tony Stark, So he just kind of sends him a check, to kind of support his candidate for mayor, and he accepts the gift. They kind of have this conversation, which is really cool to see because it kind of connects them together. Because Lincoln March says his parents, he also grew up without his parents. And, he remembers the little details about it, and how, he kind of remembers this pin that he made. And it's actually pretty sad to see. So anyways, basically Lincoln March, he kind of says something ancient and powerful and evil has come to Gotham. And before Bruce Wayne can ask him what he's talking about, suddenly the security guards are hit with daggers. And again, it's the same daggers with the owl insignias. And here we get this dude who looks like an assassin, an owl, kind of assassin. So we kind of like relate it to that, going back to that nursery rhyme. It says, or the towel will come for your head. So basically this guy is the Talon in that nursery rhyme. And it's really cool to see because it kind of what this storyline does is kind of puts all these small puzzle pieces, all over the place. And it kind of starts putting them together little by little, which we'll see more of, as I go on later in this comic. And, since Batman is secretly Bruce Wayne, he knows how to fight. He knows how to use his arm, to block the dagger. He's got really good reflexes. And he wants to make it look like he has, just lucky punches so that no one suspects that he's Batman, right? And he pretty much wants to collapse his windpipe. And he did it with so much force, with a whole lot of force, and just nothing happened. So he's like, who is this guy? This guy's really strong. And basically, this is going back to when he was kicked out the window, as I mentioned earlier. When he was kicked out the window earlier, it was kind of like one of those things where they like flash forward, and then they're kind of like, now we're in the present. And he's kicked out the window. The Talon is trying to kill him. And he basically says, I love killing the Waynes. Now, Bruce Wayne is not really sure what that means. And we'll see later in a bit. So basically, Bruce Wayne wins the fight. He lands in a gargoyle. And the Talon just presumably dies, because he fell from that far up. And this is a little bit controversial. Some people might think that Batman killed him, but, it wasn't his intention. It really was kind of accidental. The guy just kind of fell off, but he didn't die. As soon as the hospital was taking him away, getting ready to, take his body, maybe, check if he really was alive or not, this dude's eyes just glow, and he pretty much, like, destroys the entire place and takes the car for himself, which is crazy because no ordinary person can survive, many floors and break a whole car and just survive that. It's not possible. So that's really crazy to see. So jumping into issue 3, we kind of see this guy, and we find out that it's Alan Wayne. As I mentioned earlier, he's the descendant of Bruce Wayne, or rather the great grandfather, who helped make Gotham into a modern place in the first place. So he's kind of running, trying to get away from someone. And this is back in 1922, which is cool to see. So we don't really know who he's running from. And he's saying the 13th hour, it's upon us, they're coming. He's saying their nests are all around, and they have no idea what he's talking about. And he basically just falls in a sewer hole. And it's cool because it kind of transitions to now. And Batman is interrogating this guy, and he wants him to talk. He wants to ask where this Talon guy was, and how did he make it to Wayne Manor in the first place. Wayne Tower, my bad. Because essentially he says he would have known if he was at Wayne Tower. Obviously this big dude with the Talon costume would have been easily seen by people and noticed. No one noticed him, so Batman is wondering how did he make it to Wayne Tower without being noticed. So he kind of presumes that he went through the sewers, and he's going through 5 underground sewer gangs. And one of them is, and the last one that he interrogates is called the Whisper Gang. Now they're called the Whisper Gang because to prove their loyalty, they gotta wear this kind of metal kind of mask around them so that they don't snitch. It's kind of like a metaphor, so to speak. This mask around there, and they have to wear it for 6 months to prove their loyalty. So this gang is pretty vicious, and it's very hard for them to talk because their whole idea is that they never snitch on each other, right? So it's kind of harder to get information out of them. And Batman is able to pretty much take them all out. And also a cool thing he does is he puts like a super powered electromagnet, and it's like 2 small little beads or something, and they just cling them. He just clings them onto a train, and the train just leaves. And this presumably the leader of the gang is saying, he's like saying, just have mercy on me, basically. And he's saying that I don't know anything. Like, I don't know who this owl man is that you're talking about. And then Batman just basically leaves and he says, get out of my tunnel. Which is a great moment to see. So anyways, he's trying to get a voice analysis of who this Owl Talon guy is. And he doesn't even know. Not even the Bat computer knows. It says voice analysis and it says search failed. So, Batman is trying to run it again, and, it's just failed again. And, we get this dynamic between Alfred and, Bruce Wayne, because Alfred is like his father who always tells him, eat your fruits, eat your vegetables, make sure you eat, and this and that. And Batman's like, no, I gotta investigate. It's always like this. Batman, basically, he's always lacking sleep because he's just too invested in being Batman, and he needs time to rest. And Batman's like, no, I don't need to rest. I'm fine. And basically, he's asking Alfred what he knows about owls. And Alfred just says, owls, it's like, he doesn't really know too much about it. He's asking, well, the little information that you know is useful. And then he kind of starts explaining to him about his great-great-grandfather, Alan Wayne. Apparently, Alan Wayne had a particular obsession with owls. And he basically said that this obsession with the idea of the owls, he said that owls were conspiring against him. And that was kind of interesting because what we're gonna see later is that he wasn't talking about actual owls. He's probably referring to the Court of Owls, as we'll see later. And then Batman says, well, his death didn't really have anything to do with that. He's like, yeah, he fell into an open manhole in Gotham sewer, and nothing was suspected. So pretty much that was it, right? So now he goes to visit Lincoln March. He kind of says like he's heard warnings about this, these people that are out to get the most important people in Gotham. And kind of basically Lincoln March is kind of like telling him about this, and then Bruce Wayne's kind of like saying, no, I'm not afraid of any ghost stories. This Court of Owls thing, it's just a story. It's not real, he's basically saying, right? And then he kind of tells him, well, I might, just be careful out there. And then Batman leaves, right? He leaves to investigate. And essentially, Batman is narrating that his great great grandfather, Alan Wayne, was a I forgot the name, superstitious person. That's the one. He was afraid of the number 13, and he thought 13 was kind of bad luck, like a lot of people thought. So basically, when he constructed, Wayne Tower, he didn't make the 13th floor. Instead of completely getting rid of the 13th floor, he just kind of left a very small gap. And Batman's thinking, well, theoretically, someone could actually fit into that 13th level gap. And he's thinking, well, what if the Court of Owls are in this area? And, he was right. He says, bingo, he found it. Well, at first, it doesn't look like a Court of Owls office. It just kind of looks like a regular place. But then he kind of drills through the floor with the little laser he's got. And then he sees all this, armory, all this ancient stuff. And he sees a picture dating back to June 1891. Which is really cool to see because essentially what they're trying to do is relate the Court of Owls to the real-life Illuminati, right? The Illuminati in real life is a conspiracy theory that dates back to the late 1700s, and in this comic, it dates back to the 19th century, which is around the 1800s. So Batman discovers all these little bases of the Court of Owls, and he pieces everything together because Batman is considered the world's greatest detective, and one of the most recent bases that they have was funded in June 2006, and we see this picture that they have right here, and it kind of reminds me of how people talk about the elites, and all this Illuminati stuff. They wear the masks and all, and it's pretty cool to see. So it's basically kind of relating it to that. And then Batman triggered a booby trap, and the whole place basically exploded. And then we just kind of finished this issue with the Talon, with the owl beside him, just looking at the explosion. So moving on to the next issue, we kind of see this really cool cover, with the Talon, and he's kind of got Batman in his sights. And we start off where we left, right where we saw that Batman triggered a booby trap, and the whole place exploded, right? So basically, Batman, he sees this giant owl coin, and then it almost squishes him, and he's barely escaping the place. And the whole place pretty much self-detonates. He gets out just barely in the nick of time, and he uses the bat grapple to kind of break his fall, right? And now we switch back to the Batcave, and then and we see Dick Grayson. He's asking Alfred. He's like, Bruce is resting, because Batman never rests. Essentially, what he does is kind of I forgot the exact name of it, but he takes micro naps, which is instead of sleeping a full 9 hours a night or something like that, he just kind of sleeps 2 hours in the afternoon, 2 hours at night, 2 hours. He kind of does, he sleeps little by little, which is kind of cool to see because. And he hasn't even rested. He's injured. And now he's up again, and he's still working on the case. So he really doesn't let himself rest. And what he has now is the skull of his great-grandfather, Alan Wayne. And so he's trying to see what the connection is to Alan Wayne and this so-called Court of Owls. Batman, and it's important to note here, Batman still doesn't believe in the Court of Owls. He kind of thinks, no, it's just a myth. These guys are just impersonating them. He doesn't think they're real. And Dick Grayson is talking to him about the discovery of the Court of Owls bases. And, he says that Commissioner Gordon thinks that they're legitimate. And he says he's not entirely convinced. Basically, he was saying, he's asking him, well, why aren't you convinced? And Batman kind of explains, well, I'm still not convinced. And he's asking him, why are you so stubborn to admit that the Court of Owls exists? And he says, because when he was small, he would investigate about this Court of Owls. He would do a lot of, research, thinking that his parents' death was somehow linked to, something greater, and he was checking to see maybe, his parents' death were linked to something greater. And then he did all these investigations, and all the pieces came together, and when he finally found their base, there was nothing there. And he says that basically ever since, he's tried many times and failed to notice that the Court of Owls, existed. And he kind of says that he needed there to be a Court of Owls, you know, subconsciously, because as a kid he didn't want to accept that, you know, his parents were gunned down by just a, you know, regular Joe. Fun fact: the guy who killed his parents' name is Joe Chill, and I don't know. I don't know. It's a very common name, so I'm thinking maybe that's why he also suspected something was up there. And basically, you know, Dick Grayson asked him, well, how hard have you looked? And he's saying deeper than the evidence warranted. So he basically looked really deep into the evidence. Now notice, Batman, even though he was a kid, he was still doing really great detective work. And, you know, in the later days, he was also working on it. And he's saying that, you know, maybe Dick Grayson is telling him, well, maybe the Court of Owls is real. Because he's saying it's nearly 400 years old, which means, you know, maybe the city belongs to someone else and you're just not seeing it. And Batman, you know, basically cuts him off. He says, well, you know, I have to go. I got a lead up to follow on. Alan Wayne, he was saying that he was behind the construction of Gotham's, you know, tallest towers. And, you know, you know, his dead body was found beneath the sewers with multiple stab wounds. And I mean a lot, like a lot of stab wounds. And, you know, presumably it was by the Court of Owls, which I'm guessing the daggers had, you know, the little owl insignia. And I'm thinking, you know, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking back then they didn't put the owl insignia because they didn't want to know who, they didn't want people to know who they were. And I'm guessing now they started putting the owl insignia because now they're starting to want people to know, especially Batman. They want Batman to know that they exist. And that's why Batman wasn't able to find them before, because they didn't want them to find him. And now that they do, Batman is slowly piecing together the evidence. And as Batman is in the Gotham sewer, you know, he finds, you know, this kind of marble-like material. And he's saying that the sewer system is constructed entirely out of granite. And then, you know, this Talon just basically grabs Batman and throws him under. And, you know, then we skip over to the next panel where it says, Batman, welcome to the Labyrinth. So, basically, this Court of Owls is putting Batman in some kind of maze, as we see. And that's where the issue ends. So, on to the next issue. We kind of have Batman being killed by the Talon, presumably. In the cover that it shows, which, you know, if Batman dies, they won't be able to sell comics, so that's not true. So we kind of see that, you know, Batman has been gone for 8 days. Everyone is just, like, wondering where he's been, even Catwoman, even Robin. You know, Jim Gordon still has the bat signal on. He still has hopes that maybe Batman will return. And he kind of explains to him, well, it's not the bat signal. I'm not just putting it for Batman in case he returns. He's also putting it so that other people can see it. And basically, so we see Batman is trying to play it tactical. He's trying to survive in this maze. So it's been 8 days now. This is like day 8 of him in the maze. He's starting to go crazy. He doesn't even trust he you know, doesn't trust anyone anymore. He's going insane. You know, he wants to drink some water and he thinks it's drugged, which presumably it is. I think it was. Either that or he was just insane, but, you know, going insane. And he says he has to stay in the dark. And basically, they turn on the lights and they're trying to tell Batman the story about the Court of Owls. They're trying to tell Batman who they are, what they're all about. And he basically shows them all the people, you know, hundreds of people over the years. All the people they've killed in this maze. And he's saying it feels like something's watching, a Minotaur watching. And what's cool about this is that they relate the Court of Owls. They kind of get influence from ancient Greece. Because, you know, in ancient Greece they had a coin with the owl on it, and that, you know, represented wealth and power. And, you know, they talk about the Minotaur, and they put the Labyrinth, which is a part of Greek mythology. And basically, they want to tell him that Batman is next. Batman is the next dude they're going to kill, presumably. And Batman says, no, I'm not listening. You know, and he breaks the camera. And this is important that he breaks the camera. You'll see later why, you know, he breaks the camera. Not just because he's mad, but he's got something, you know, pretty clever planned. And he starts hallucinating. He thinks the Court of Owls is in front of him, and they're not. And you know, he's saying he says I know all the tricks, I invented them. Wherever you are, I'll find you. Like, essentially kind of shows you he's going crazy in this maze. And he's saying it's my city, I know every alley, I know every rooftop, it's all the same to me, he kind of says, right? And basically he kind of discovers this morgue. And he says one is open, one is missing. And he says, and he's wondering, like who is this person that the body's missing, right? And he's essentially going crazy in here. And that's kind of the idea here. And they kind of take another picture of him. They're kind of saying, you know, smile for the camera because you're next, kind of thing, right? And then he sees his parents. And it's like wait, hold up, dude. His parents? So his parents basically, you know, like I said, they died when he was a kid. And it's, you know, kind of another hallucination he's having, so he didn't actually see them. And you know, he kind of like they're clawing at him, this and that. So he's really starting to hallucinate, and he's starting to go crazy in here. And it's kind of like it's kind of crazy to see. And then he's saying, I'm not listening to you, I'm not listening to you. And this issue is really good. Like, you guys got to read this for yourself. I'm just kind of telling you the gist of it, but if you guys really want to see, you should read it for yourself. And this is where the issue ends. So moving on to the next issue here, we kind of see that Batman is still missing. And we kind of like move to kind of what people are doing. Meanwhile, they're kind of burning down the bat signal, kind of burned up. And they're losing hope, because Batman, like I said, he's a symbol of hope of Gotham City. And without Batman, Gotham City can fall into chaos. Not just for the villains. The villains are going to start being more chaotic, but also the Bat family, because he's kind of like what ties them together, which is a really cool thing to see. And basically, the Talon says, Batman, the Court of Owls has sentenced you to die. And he kind of stabs Batman. And, he hits Batman with the camera, and he's kind of like grabbing him up. And this is I think this is a cameo to when Bane breaks Batman's back, he kind of holds him up in the air. I think that's what it's referencing. He doesn't break his back here, but in the 90s comic, Bane does. But anyways, he's imagining these people. It kind of shows you that he thinks that these Talon guys are monsters, and then he blinks, and then they're actually regular people. He sees monster again, he blinks, they're regular people. So you see he's hallucinating more and more. And he hasn't, gone to sleep. And he's just like derived from sleep, from, he's hungry, he's thirsty, he's hallucinating. And basically, they're slowly consuming him emotionally. So, Batman says, that's enough. Like, I've had enough of this. And basically he says, the Talon is saying, you can't beat us. We're owls. That's another cool reason why the writer chose to put owls as the villain, because owls are natural predators of bats, and they steal other people's nests, other birds' nests, so they're kind of stealing Batman's city. It's a cool metaphor. So basically, Batman is kind of like, what happens when the prey battles a predator? He kind of fights back the Talon, and he actually beats him because he's had enough. And he kind of tells him, this isn't your city. This is just some kind of architectural thing you built. This model, this isn't the actual city, it's just a scale, right? Because it kind of shows how Batman is kind of taking back his city little by little, right? It says, you're not special, no matter what you've told yourself, you're finished. And then he says, like, that goes for all of you. And this part is really cool, because what he does is so like I told you guys last issue that he grabbed his camera. He punched the camera, and I told you that was important, because what he did is he didn't just punch the camera, he grabbed a certain metal, and he says potassium chloride can ignite when mixed with with filament plates from the camera before. So what he does is he ignites the marble underneath him, and he escapes. He goes into the sewer. And he can't make it out, and he presumably dies. And what we see here is that the Court of Owls, they're like, basically this Talon guy, they're saying we could heal him up, You know, why don't we just heal him up? And then they're like, no, he's disposable. He's not worth it. Let's wake all of these guys up. So basically, the guys in these bodies and stuff, they're actually reanimating dead bodies, which is something that we'll see later. And we kind of flash back to Batman's origin. You know, he says basically what we see in a lot of Batman's origin stories is that, you know, Bat flies through his window, and that's when he decides to be, you know, Batman. And it's really cool to see, you know, the owl kind of grabs the bat, you know, showing that it's a natural predator of the bat. And we kind of switch back to Batman. And Batman was unconscious this whole time. Batman, you know, for a while, we don't know how long, could have been hours, could have been days. And someone just like revives him. You know how they have those shock thingies and they say clear and then they make the heart beat again? Basically this girl did that. And she says, well, you know, just calm down, it's just me. And she's an important person in the Bat family. I think her name was Harper Row, if I remember correctly. And Batman says, you know, leave me alone, I'm getting out of here. And Batman has just like lost it, dude. He's just, they pretty much figured, you know, they broke Batman. The Court of Owls is saying they broke Batman. We don't need to worry about him anymore. You know, they broke him emotionally. Physically, he's beat. You know, emotionally, he's beat. Mentally beat. You know, he's just absolutely crushed. So he eventually makes it back to the Batcave, and then Alfred pulls out a shotgun on him, and he says, identify yourself. And then Batman, you know, he's all weak, and he says, it's me. And Alfred, you know, he kind of says like, oh my god, dude, he's back. Batman's back. And, you know, he takes him back to the Batcave, and he sees the freaking Talon, like, right in front of him in the Batcave. And then Batman's just, like, absolutely terrified. And he says, he's dead. Like, don't worry about it. It's not actually him. I mean, it is him, but he's not alive. So we kind of discover that we're going to find out who the Talon is and what importance he has to the Court of Owls. So Batman, you know, he gets over his fear and he says, get him on the table. You know, we're gonna test out on him. And meanwhile, the Court of Owls is setting up their warriors. You know, they're kind of these guys, you know, to kind of start trying to take over Gotham, right? And essentially, you know, what they find out is that, you know, this guy's the Talon, right? But not only that, you know, he was kind of chasing Batman and, you know, this and that. He was like one of the assassins. He, you know, essentially is dead, but not quite dead. Like, he's been dead for you know, hundreds of years, essentially. And what the Court of Owls is doing is they're using, you know, this kind of like thing, this kind of chip in their wisdom to reanimate the dead body. So, again, they relate it to ancient Greece, where they would put a piece of a coin under the person. Like, in ancient Greece, what people would do is they would put a coin under the dead person's tongue to pay passage to Hades. So the Court of Owls is kind of imitating this by using that same material in those coins to reanimate the dead cells in their bodies, because it's a conductive metal and, you know, it kind of shocks them back to life, right? So they're kind of wondering, so how do we kill this Talon guy, right? And they eventually come to this conclusion where it's like, you know, you gotta freeze the person. Like, they cannot be dead, because they'll just reanimate them again and regenerate them and this and that. So we gotta keep them frozen, basically. And you know, Batman kind of says, you know, kind of talks to Dick, and they have this cool dynamic where, because Batman really never tells anyone anything, because for their own safety, and then Dick Grayson kind of gets mad at him, and Batman just like smacks him hard. Because essentially Dick kind of like yells at him, kind of like saying, well, why aren't you telling me all your secrets, this and that? And then they kind of calm down. And, you know, it says, and then Batman also explains to him about, you know, that Dick Grayson was supposed to be one of these reanimated dead bodies himself. And then it's like, holy shit. And basically, what Batman is saying is like, okay, not only are they reanimated dead bodies, but also this Talon guy, right, is his great grandfather, and it's like what? It's like, it's crazy. And then you know, they would have recruited Dick Grayson, they would have killed him off and reanimated his body, but Batman kind of took him under his wing, and he was protected under Batman, essentially, without him even knowing. And what happens is basically this Volume 1 storyline pretty much ends by, you know, the assassins are ready to go, they're ready to take over Gotham City. So essentially what happens is that the Court of Owls has been hiding for hundreds of years, you know, for centuries. And now they're ready to take back their city. They've been hiding for too long, and now they want to take back Gotham City. And that's where the issue ends. So it's really crazy. Now, I'm going to review Volume 2 in the future. So if you guys, you know, just to see if you want more of this, you know, leave a comment if you guys want to know, you know, more about this story, if you have any questions, you know, this and that. And yeah, so that was a pretty crazy story. So it's only Volume 1. The story pretty much spans over 2 volumes, so I will review Volume 2 sometime in the future. And if you guys want to see more, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.